Early in my career, I was lucky enough to have a mentor who taught me an important concept. He said, "You can't want the result more for the client than they do." I needed to hear that at the time as I was starting and wanted to change the world with my treatments, pouring every ounce of my soul and energy into trying to help the client get their injury fixed, only to have them wash out from treatment and seem to care less, even when I knew they were getting better. I was reminded of this lesson this week when I was speaking to a provider who I've been mentoring who is struggling with giving everything he had to the client, producing amazing results, only to have the dropout of care and get the easy fix of surgery, which we all know that is far from that. In this episode, I wanted to share some insights to help anyone else struggling with caring more than the client does and emphasize that you must separate yourself from the outcome and focus solely on doing your best. I hope you gain some new perspectives and can avoid getting sucked into this trap that I struggled with for years and that many other providers have as well. Welcome back to the Soft Tissue Treatment Revolution podcast, where we teach manual therapists a new treatment system that eliminates the frustration of not getting consistent results so they can help more people get out of chronic pain, all while working 50% less and easily doubling their income. If you're new to the show and you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Matt Maggio. I am a soft tissue injury treatment expert. My focus is on diagnosing and treating adhesion, also known as scar tissue, and reducing inflammation from chronic injuries without the use of drugs, injections, or surgeries, which leads to a significant increase in overall functioning, flexibility, and long lasting pain relief. So a quick story that inspired this entire podcast, the idea that you can't want the result for your client more than they do. I have this provider that I'm training. He's awesome. He's doing amazing work. The client they were seeing said it was the best they'd ever felt. They were like 3 or 4 treatments in. Throughout the process, though, the client wasn't listening to their load restriction recommendations, still doing a bunch of dumb stuff that they shouldn't have been doing, but they were still responding and doing really well with care. Couldn't believe how much better they were doing. They were finding and fixing the adhesion, improving range of motion, improving flexibility, function to the area. The provider thought everything was doing great. And then out of the blue, this person just pulled the plug, sent him a text message and said, "You know what? I'm just going to get the surgery and be done with it." And the provider was just really upset. And I get it. I've been there. It's like, what am I doing? It kind of like blindsided him. It's like, you're telling me you're feeling amazing. This is the best you've ever done. And then all of a sudden, you're just going to go get the surgery and just wash out of care. And it can be really frustrating. So, some concepts to understand this and why it happens in the first place. Number one is clients really just want to be passive in the process. They basically come in and say, "Here's the problem I started. Here's the fire I started. You fix it. You do everything." They don't want to really participate in the care. They basically want you to carry them up the mountain. My thing, and what I always say is, I'm not going to carry you up the mountain. I'm going to help you and I'm going to be a guide along the way, but you have to participate in the process. They think if they just come in for a treatment, that it can just negate all the other dumb things they do throughout the week and just destroy their body. Next thing is, most people out there, and I'm just as guilty as well, is we're just unrealistic with our current state of health. A lot of people have metabolic issues. They have poor health. They have a ton of stress. They eat like crap. They don't exercise. They don't move, but they think they're healthy. And a lot of times they're not. Next is just a flaw in human nature. We always want to try to find the quick fixes as cheap as possible with little or no effort. It doesn't exist, but people do it all the time. One example I always learned was in the health and wellness space. The supplement industry is like a $50 billion industry, and then like gyms and weight loss are like 20 billion. There's almost like a 2 to 1 difference. It's because the supplements don't require any effort, and you can just take this magic pill and it's going to fix all your problems. It doesn't happen. There's a time component to everything. Next is just understanding the frame. So one of the best books I've ever read is called Pitch Anythings by a guy named Oren Klaff. And he basically talks about, in a situation, there's these different frames when you present something in a social interaction. And basically in this situation is someone wants to be the alpha and someone has to be the beta. Why this client lost out to this one is because they lost to the doctor. The doctor, in the client's eyes, was actually more validated, higher rank than them. So even if the doctor is just saying nonsense, they're still going to listen to that. And just a little backstory on this one. This was an older gentleman that was in his 50s, and a lot of times dealing with older people, especially men, can be a problem because they don't want to be in the beta role. They want to be the alpha role. They want to be in control, and the doctor's really telling them what they want to hear. So that gets into the other concept is there's two types of providers out there. There's ones that tell you that them tell the client what they want to hear, and then the ones that tell them what they need to hear. And a lot of times in this situation, the doctor's story just presented better. It's like, yeah, we'll just go in, do this surgery, a little snip here, a little cut there, good to go. You'll be back to normal. They don't even talk about the rest of the problem, that you could get an infection during the surgery. It might not even work. It could probably just make the problem a lot worse. You could have a reaction to the anesthesia, but they paint this picture of like, oh, no effort, don't have to do anything. It doesn't happen. We're the bad guys as the soft tissue providers. We're actually the better solution. Ours just takes more effort and more sacrifice. So a lot of people don't want to go through with that and they want to take that shortcut. So the next thing you want to like focus on, and I think is really important, is how to get them to care and be compliant. Number one is just stop caring so much if they don't care. You can't care more than they do. You can't want someone to be healthier or be out of pain or an injury more than they want to. If they're not going to get there, then you sure as hell shouldn't get there either. Next thing, and this is a big thing that I talked about when I was mentoring this person. This is what we do in my clinics and everyone that we teach is we get the clients to pay for all their treatments up front. We don't do a one by one visit because they're going to really just focus solely on the symptoms and how they think they are, and they're not going to see it all the way through. We want to make sure that we have a good runway to go in there and provide the best value. And that happens with a commitment, and it's going in there as well. Because a lot of times as providers, we get stuck in this idea. I was like, oh, I really got to prove it to the client today that this is working. I'm making good strides. And a lot of times we end up over treating. And when we over treat, it actually can cause some big problems. We make this mistake as manual therapists. We think, oh, the only thing we can do is just either treat it and it feels better, or we treat it and it doesn't do anything. We don't consider that when we over treat it, it can make it a lot worse. And that happens when you're trying to focus visit by visit. I don't focus as much on symptoms. I focus more on the function. Next thing is I just have them sign a code of conduct. When they pay me up front, they sign a code of conduct. It's like, hey, come for the appointments when we say, be on time. Don't cancel last minute. Don't do dumb things in between. Don't get care with five other providers that I have no idea what are doing. All of those things really show them that you're serious and you want to be that solution provider. Next, when they violate that, you kick them out and you keep the money. You're doing it for them. You're not doing it for you. You're not finding a way to steal their money. You're doing it to hold them accountable. The reason people aren't better is because people don't hold them accountable. You can make that change and you can switch that in your practice and put yourself in a whole different echelon of other providers out there. Next is don't be wishy-washy with load management. On the basic term, an injury is what's called load versus capacity. It's like a teeter-totter. On one side's load, on the other side's capacity. Us as providers, we're improving their capacity so they can do more load. But if they're continuing to do all the load in between, as we're fixing the capacity, they're not going to get any better. And this was a big thing here too, where they didn't communicate, hey, I need you to stop doing this. A lot of times we're like, oh, if I tell them to stop doing something, they're not going to want to come back, they're not going to listen, then they're not going to get better because they're not looking at you as an expert. When they're trying to negotiate with you on load management, things like that, they don't take you seriously. You lost that frame. You want to have that doctor frame because if they went to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, you need to stop doing this, they're going to listen. You should be able to do that as well. And that's all you communicate and how you educate them throughout the entire process. Next is every time, give your absolute best every single visit and be okay if they don't follow through. One of my favorite books of all time is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and talks about these four agreements. The last agreement is always do your best. If you can say that you confidently went in there, did your best job, you helped them the best that you could, it's done. You're even. You're square. This is what I told this provider. He was so upset. He thought he messed up. I'm like, you didn't mess up. You're just fighting an uphill battle and you don't see all these extra social cues and frames and human nature and all that stuff going in there. Next is be quick to deflect when the client blames you. So a lot of times clients come in, you're like, hey, how's it been doing since last week? They're like, oh my God, it's awful. I don't know what you did to me. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, yeah. I don't get reactive with them. Like, oh, I go, well, what have you done since last visit? And they're like, well, I did nothing. I was like, oh, okay. So you just lived in a box, did nothing. They're like, well, actually, I played tennis for 6 hours. I took a private lesson and then I did all this yard work and I did all this stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, well, remember you got these problems. And we talked about managing your load. I need you to manage the load in between or this treatment's not going to work. So you know what I do? I give them a strike in my code of conduct. And I'm like, I'm not being a jerk about this. I'm doing this because I care about you and I want you to get better. That's why I'm giving you a strike. And you know what? Usually once I give them one strike, they're pretty good. Sometimes I have to give two. I think I've only given three strikes, maybe two or three times over the last 14 years in my career. And those were all because they were late and they didn't show up for their appointments. And those people are a pain in the butt anyway. Next is slow down and spend some time communicating with them in the process, educating them about what you're doing, how you're helping, what they need to do in between visits, how they can help this problem get better. That's exactly what we teach you. And asking a big question every single time is, how's this affecting your quality of life? We always ask this on the initial consultation so we can really dive in with them about what's going on and what we can do to help. So much of us as providers, we just want to do all the treatment in the world, but it's not about that. It's about doing the right treatment, the most effective treatment, but then communicating to the client exactly what's going on, what they need to do, and how you're going to be a guide for them and help them along the journey. And last one, this is the best one of all. This can help you out of all these situations and just change your whole perspective. Get so damn good that you don't need them because you're so full and you're making ridiculous money. They need you. Switch that perspective. You have the goods, you have the things to do. And if they don't want to follow the process, they can get the hell out because they're not going to find anyone else like you in their area. That's it. So that's all I got. Appreciate you guys listening and watching. But as I end every podcast, go out there and be great this week. The world needs access to your amazing treatments so they can stay the hell away from pain pills, injections, and surgeries, which only make things worse and definitely destroy people's lives. Appreciate you guys listening or watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.